Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, welcome. We just like to share what we've got going on in our small garden space, and we are not professionals by any means. In fact, what we learn, we like to share with you, so that's why we do what we do, and we post various videos throughout the year. In fact, it's been a while since we posted our last video, so I wanted to come back today and get you a video that will give you some information on what we've learned from last year so that you can maybe apply it and take that information to what you do in your garden depending on what your situation is. So the main idea with today's video is to share with you our top 5 plants that we grew in our garden last year, and they're not necessarily in any kind of ascending or descending order, just the top 5 overall fantastic plants that we found huge success with as we went through the season from spring all the way until the fall. In fact, most of these, because we're in Southern California, are still alive and doing well at this time in our garden. But their real moment of glory was definitely last season. So let's start with our first plant that we tried for the first time, which was the brand new for 2023 Super Bells Pink Lemonade. And last year I think they had it labeled as Prism, but I believe, since I looked online last to make sure I knew what I was talking about before I shared with you guys, I think it's called Pink Lemonade Magic or Magic Pink Lemonade now. So if you look on their website, I think it's labeled under that title name. But anyways, guys, this plant was beautiful. I think one of the best characteristics about this plant is obviously, without saying, the blooms are beautiful. So they start off with a beautiful bud that's yellow in tone. And then as they open, they turn more of a pink. And so you get that variegated hue on one flower, or variegated colors on one flower, which really, when you're doing hanging baskets and you're choosing to choose just one plant instead of doing a combination of various plants, it's really striking to see multiple colors from a single plant. So this year we chose to plant them in a hanging basket, which is right by our sliding glass window, and we could see it all season long from the living room, and when we're outside we can enjoy it as well. And it just was a really nice focal point to see when you're either in the house or outside. So you could really get away with planting this if you're going with a monoculture look and you were trying to plant one single plant in all of your hanging baskets. I think it would look absolutely stunning because you do have that variety in color from one plant. And I think it would look really cool on the back of our house if I did in fact do that. So I think the plan this year is to trim this plant back up to where the soil is, give it a nice haircut, and hopefully I can get 2 years out of it, which is one of the benefits of being here in Southern California. Our cold doesn't get that severe to where it zaps all of our plants. I mean, we get down to 32, 35, but only for a couple days, and they're not usually consecutive. So these Super Bells are pretty cold hardy, and so it doesn't really cause any ill effect on them. However, after a number of years in the garden, they do fizzle out, and so I'm hoping for one more year with these beautiful flowers in that hanging basket. Okay, so for number 2, I can't go without talking about another Super Bells that was new for last year, which is the beautiful double yellow. The cool thing about these is, to me, they seemed like they had a slower growth habit. They were extremely compact, and when I placed them in my containers that I purchased from Lowe's and spray painted to give them a kind of an upscale look rather than cheap plastic containers, which they are, I repotted my boxwoods in them, and I underplanted them with this variety along with another variety, and I think it was the perfect application for something like that. I know that a lot of people have different opinions on whether or not to underplant greenery or boxwoods or evergreens, but I think they really did look super nice, especially with the boxwoods trimmed and those beautiful flowers blooming underneath. I planted them there, and I also had them in a hanging basket, and in both areas they did great. I mean, a beautiful yellow flower, especially a clear, solid yellow flower, and in this case in the double variety, just looks so cheerful in the backyard. It catches your eye and it really does stand out. Had no disease issues with these plants at all. They just kind of bloomed and bloomed and bloomed from the spring through the summer and then into the fall. I still have some blooms on them, although they're not as full of blooms because we don't have the heat and it hasn't been as sunny as it usually is in the spring. They are still beautiful, and I just need to trim them back and hopefully get a second year with them as well. So Super Bells Double Yellow, a great variety to try in your garden. Okay, so for our number 3 pick, it's not a new annual or variety by any means, but it was new to us because I had found it at Lowe's. And anytime I find a new variety of any kind of annual or plant, I get pretty excited, especially with Proven Winners annuals. We don't usually find them. It's pretty rare around here. And then when we do find them, it's very limited on what they have available. So I found Diamond Frost Euphorbia. I picked up about 6 of them and planted them in 2 different locations, one in the containers that I had purchased from Lowe's in a combination of other plants, and then I also popped them in the ground over by our tower boxwoods. The ones that were in the containers, I mean, they were like, they made that container look like it were an arrangement with baby's breath. I mean, they're wispy, they're airy, they're beautiful, they're full, they're just a great addition to any other container that you can think of if you need that filler. One thing I was surprised about was how big they get, and they were quite full. In fact, in the summer we had a tropical storm that came through and really beat them down and they flopped. I just trimmed them back to the bottom. I figured, you know what, let's see how they do. They came back perhaps even stronger than before. I mean, the stalks on them were really, really strong, and they're still blooming now, but they're kind of lulling a little bit with their growth because, again, like I said before, it's wintertime. So the ones that I planted in the ground in comparison to the ones that were in the containers did equally as well. I didn't see any difference in them. They just look beautiful in both situations. So that would be a high recommend from us for sure, because it just gives you that nice, beautiful filler. And it's just stunning to watch them grow, and they're extremely hardy, which to me, guys, in any garden, if you can have a plant that's very hardy and doesn't take a lot of work and a lot of maintenance, then it's a winner for sure. So I couldn't go through this list of my top 5 without talking about Diamond Frost Euphorbia. Absolutely beautiful. In fact, the website, when you look on the Proven Winners website, it shows a container with the Diamond Frost, which I'll put on the screen right now. I mean, if you wanted to put those in a container just by themselves, it would be beautiful. I mean, you wouldn't even have to worry about putting any other plants with it. It would be beautiful on its own. So you might want to give that one a shot. Highly recommended for sure. So for our number 4 pick, it's not actually a plant on its own, but rather a combination of flowers together. Guys, I'm telling you, if you have an opportunity to plant this combination, it will not disappoint. I mean, the colors, how they work together, along with the tall thriller that is included, beautiful, beautiful. So last year I went ahead and looked on Proven Winners website for some ideas for combinations, and I found the 2023 recommended combination Misty Seas that contains Mini Vista Violet Star, Mini Vista White, and Mini Vista Indigo, along with the thriller, the Blue Mohawk Juncus, I believe. And I was skeptical at first because of the size of the Juncus, but man, over time, it was just a stunner in the garden. Those colors together, especially in that combination, it was just a modern look that was cooling on the eye and stunning to see for sure. So as they grew, I think the big surprise, even though I was planting the same recipe in 2 different pots, is to see how the plants grew together and how the colors ended up showing differently in each container. I mean, I didn't worry about them being completely different because obviously it's the same recipe, but they did have a different look and they just really worked well together. In one container I had more white showing, in the other container I had more purple showing. In both containers, that blue Juncus, which was slow to start at first because it was really in the middle of spring when I planted it, really when the heat of the summer came on, it was really warm for days on end, man, it just like blasted through and grew like I didn't expect it to. I think the best part of those containers, like I've said before, if you haven't seen those videos, I do have a planting video on when those went in, was how the Juncus really was airy and you could kind of see through. So it wasn't like, it didn't block the view of what was behind it, especially the evergreen shrubs that I have back there. If I had planted a tall purple fountain grass or something like that, it would have been a solid kind of like barrier. But the great thing about this is when that Juncus grew through, you had the beautiful flowers. You could see the top of the flowers. They grew in among the rods of the grass there. And it was just amazing. So for sure, guys, if you have an opportunity to plant that combination, I think it would look great in any situation. It has more of a modern look to me anyways. Some people might disagree with that. But because of the Juncus, I feel like it does give it that more clean look, as opposed to something that's towering above and kind of like cascading over, if that makes sense. And before we get to our number 5 pick, just remember that these are not in necessarily any type of order. So when I say number 5, it wasn't actually number 5 to us. We kind of like equated all of these as huge successes in our garden, 1 through 5, and we just wanted to share them with you. So when I say number 5, it is top of the list along with the past 4 items that I was talking about before. So number 5 is the absolutely gorgeous Surefire white begonias, which were new for 2023 last year. I mean, I planted these in 2 different situations, here at my house and at my mom's house, and in both of them they were just stunning. I think there are 2 wow factors to this one. One being obviously the white begonias are just full and profuse all the way through. And then the foliage was a stunning surprise as well. In fact, my mom had a lot of compliments of how beautiful the leaves were. Her garden was like, I can't believe how I've never seen a begonia with foliage that large before. Just lush and green, not a deep green, but more of a between a chartreuse green and a regular solid green. It was just so different and beautiful against the red Surefire begonias that she had on the porch, which have a darker foliage on them. So that contrast really did set each other off, and it was amazingly spectacular to look at. And in our garden here, we planted them in the front where I have different light situations depending on what time of year it is. If it's in the fall, we have more of a shade situation. If it's in the summer when the sun is straight up and above, then it's getting full sun there. And this annual could handle either of those situations equally. So at my mom's house and here where they're in the ground, they did really nicely, and I would plant them that way again and again. I think the ones at my mom's house were a little bit more vigorous because they got more sun throughout the day, and so that I think had a lot to do with it, although it could be because they're in a very rich potting soil with a lot of nutrients, because that could have been part of it as well. But nevertheless, both of them were beautiful. Highly recommended, super hardy all year long. One thing that's really cool about them that really stands out is at one point at my mom's house, they got so heavy and so full. We had that tropical storm and I had to go over there and basically cut them back almost down to the ground. I think I left about 2 inches. And I told my mom at the time that, well, we'll just see what happens. And if they die, then we'll just plant something else. And if they come back, that's a super amazing surprise and a great bonus. And in fact, they came back and they got just as big, and she had 2 rounds of growth and 2 rounds of flowers and foliage, and they still look great. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim them back again, because again, we're here in Southern California, so who knows what could happen. So it's going to be fun to figure out how hardy these plants actually are. From what I can tell, they are amazing. So that's it for today. We hope you enjoyed our top 5 plants that we grew in our garden last year and our top 5 items that we'd recommend for you in your situation. And of course, you know, we don't have all the answers. We're just like you guys. We just like to share what we've learned, and we hope you enjoy the ride along the way. So until next time, thanks for being here today, and see you soon. Bye-bye.